end of this
and welcome
video
to another video of Beat and
and
Banging.
like the content
In
you
today's
just
video,
saw,
I will
I
be
would
going
advise you to
over the
subscribe for
SRX race
whenever I
and what
come out with
NASCAR can
more
take
racing
away from it
content
to
next
improve
week
their
since
own
NASCAR
series.
is taking
Also,
Easter
I'll be
off.
talking about the
I'll be
All-Star race
releasing a
at
video
Texas
about the
Motor
first 7 races
Speedway.
of the season and what I liked and
I mean,
disliked from them.
yay! And then at the
So
end of
thank
the
you for
video, I'll be doing
watching
a
this
short
week's episode
preview
of
of the
Beating and
Nashville
Banging,
Superspeedway
and make
race.
sure to
But
stay
with that,
classy.
let's get straight into this week's video. So this past weekend, the Superstar Racing Experience had their inaugural race at Stafford Speedway this past weekend. And for NASCAR fans, it was a breath of fresh air. And I'll be talking about why and what NASCAR can take away from this to influence their own series. So let's just start by doing a little overview of what transpired during the 2 hour time slot CBS gave the SRX series. And a rough idea of what transpired. So when the broadcast began, they played a little intro about the SRX, and then they took us straight to the track where we were introduced to the whole CBS crew at the track. Pit reporters were there interviewing drivers, starting off with Helio Castroneves, Indy 500 winner from a few weeks ago. CBS took us to the booth to meet the commentators for the race, which were Alan Bestwick and Danica Patrick. Alan Bestwick being a former NASCAR commentator with ESPN for about 7 years and also with CBS for a few years too. But they gave us a rough overview of the format for the race going on and their time slot. Keep in mind, they did all this stuff, all these interviews, and all the formatting, and all this stuff in a 10 to 15 minute window of their 2 hour time limit, but it didn't feel rushed. So we finally see the cars get started up, and they do a few pace laps around, then they throw the green flag. During the first heat, Alan Bestwick and Dan Patrick go through the field drivers, talking about the drivers and their own individual story too, because in the beginning of the race or of the broadcast, they only got through a few of the drivers. So while they're commentating the race, they were putting in little clips of the drivers and their own separate interviews from before the race about their whole story and why they're here and why they're doing this. But instantly, for viewers who had never seen auto racing, they got to see all these driver stories and maybe they could connect to them to some way. And then during these two heats at the field, we saw lots of action on the track with a few cars wrecking. Everyone stayed pretty close. There wasn't a really dull moment in those first two heat races. But we finally get to the main event and it took the SRX a while to get everyone ready because Bill Elliott's car had some issues with the fuel pressure. But during that time, we had some time to interview some drivers. They did an interview with Michael Waltrip, and during his interview, he was talking about how old he was and how that affected him during the first two heat races. So while he said everything in my body hurt and he felt really old after Kobe White, the hometown driver who was there as the Rocky Balboa card, as they called him. He passed up Michael Waltrip in the final heat, and Michael said he felt all this stuff going through his body and through his head about how old he was and how painful it felt to have that happen to him. And also in this time, the booth did a great job talking about how the series is made over a 2 year span with Tony Stewart and three other co-founders working together to make this all true. So the main event finally begins after all that, and it was great to see some old school Saturday night short track racing. If you're a football fan like myself, it's like Friday Night Lights. Small crowd, 10,000 fans. Makes it sound like 100,000 because this is what these people wait for all day long to see their favorite driver race under the lights. In the 100 lap main event, it was fun to watch, but in the end, the hometown guy won and the crowd left happy. That being Kobe White. It was a great race to watch. I mean, the 100 lap sprint, they had a fun flag, I guess apparently halfway through the main event. Race control can choose whether or not to bunch them back up and throw out a caution so that way it's entertaining racing throughout the whole time instead of just one guy getting out to a big lead, which Kobe White did have a big lead at that time at the halfway point. So that's why they threw the caution out. So it kept everything, it mixed stuff up and made it more entertaining for the fans there. So I didn't think it was bad. It was just, it just nobody really knew about it. It gives for NASCAR fans, it gives them PTSD about competition cautions always being thrown out or random cautions for some god awful reason that doesn't make any sense. When I looked at this, I was just thinking during this race, like, this is great for NASCAR. They can take away so many things from this event and make their own racing series so much better. Because the SRX just they use everything that NASCAR was great at in the early times of their stardom of their sport and why they became so popular because SRX they're racing at these old tracks with these hardcore fans who love racing. They love seeing this stuff. It's great. I think the with NASCAR they can use this. It would be you know that there we now know that there's still huge markets of people in these small towns that can fill up a little short track stand of 10,000. I think the NASCAR can take away from this is we need to go back to more short track racing. We need to bring that back. We need them. I know that they're trying to bring back Nashville Fairgrounds, but they only have about 3 short tracks on the schedule right now, that being Martinsville, Bristol, and Richmond. I know that next year they're going to have the Auto Club short track. I think that'll be ready by then, but Nashville Fairgrounds won't be ready for another few years, at least. And with all these road courses they've added to the schedule, they should now be focusing on adding more short tracks as well. Because even though road courses do have a great product, it's not the original thing that NASCAR advertises. They advertise close racing, beating and banging, door bumpers at each other, and then after the race you have fist fights and all these tempers. And I think you don't get that anymore with NASCAR. You look at these mile and a half track races, the cars are always so far apart. The aero package is just a mess right now that it makes mile and a half racing look like a super speedway racing, but instead of that, all the cars are just in a line around the track going the same speed, and when they try passing somebody up, the other driver in the preferred group can just easily mosey on by them, and then that person trying to pass them loses 3 or 4 spots. With them, it just doesn't feel right to me what they've done. So the best thing they can do at this point is bring back some more short tracks, focus on them, try getting rid of a few mile and a half tracks, and I think it'll make the experience for the fans a lot better. And they can work on that and expose new fans to this great sport. What I liked about other things I liked about the SRX race, I know I was going on a tangent on NASCAR and mile and a half races and all that stuff, but I wanted to go back to SRX broadcast about CBS, and I don't think that Fox has done terrible job this year. They've, some races are better than others, and we can always poke jokes at them, but they're good. Mike Joy's good, Jeff Gore and Clint Boyer are good, but CBS in a 2 hour time window. I know it went over about 10 or 15 minutes, but still, they used this broadcast crew that they had there. They were great. They made everything make sense. It was just such a small time window that you knew what was going on. They had great reporters telling us everything about what was going on during the race and what to be prepared for. And there wasn't very much lollygagging around because they only had 2 hours. So they had to make every minute count, and I don't think we see that anymore with Fox or NBC at this point. I think CBS has always done a great job of this with their NFL broadcasts. Jim Nantz and Tony Romo calling an afternoon NFL game. They're always on point. They're always doing a great job and explaining certain situations and what you can maybe see, foreshadow, and they have great insight on everything going on. I think that CBS has one of the best sports broadcasting teams, producers, and whoever else, and they do it at such a higher level than any of these other sporting networks, NBC, ABC, Fox, ESPN, and all those other sports channels. And that's what I like about them. I mean, if I had to choose, we've seen how bad these broadcasts have gotten over the past few years with ESPN and all these other ones. And CBS has this formula that they've been using, and it's getting great results. And I think we saw that formula being used during this race. And it also helps having Alan Bestwick, one of the best announcers right now in racing, cover the race, so he can get through situations, talk about drivers, overviews, and all the other stuff. But those are just my thoughts on the race. But if you guys have any other thoughts, please comment down below. I'm always here for a little discussion in the comment section. If you guys ever throw a comment down there about broadcasting, all the other stuff. But now that we got that out of the way, let's talk about the All-Star race at Texas Motor Speedway. This should be fun. Well, the open event started off pretty rocky with multiple wrecks happening in the first stage because in the Fox broadcast they explained that the track tempo is at about 140 degrees. So it was very slick out there. It was very hard for the tires to grip the track, and you saw two or three incidents or accidents happen in the first 20 lap stage. But after that, everything pretty much settled down. So glad that things didn't get out of hand with that. Ross Chastain won the first stage and made it to the All-Star race, and Tyler Reddick won the second stage, and then Eric Almirola won the last stage, which was very surprising. I didn't think that Eric Almirola even had a chance in these with how he was performing in the other races. Matthew DiBenedetto won the fan vote, but since it was Eddie Gossige's last race as a track president of Texas Motor Speedway, he wanted to go out with a bang, and boy, did he go out with a bang. In the driver intros, you saw in the front stretch that they had the Dallas Cowboy cheerleaders out there with their doing their thing, and a band playing, but we literally could not hear the band on the broadcast. It was just you would see them cut to the band singing something. The guy was just singing to the mic, and we couldn't hear what he was singing. But looked like the guy was doing really good out there, but I I didn't know what was going on with them. The drivers were coming out there. Some were coming out there with a hat, but they weren't putting the hat on because they already had their sponsorship hat on. So they didn't want to put on the Texas hat. So they were just holding it by their side. So it was pretty hilarious to see them. And just as you think it was going to get a more chaotic, when they were doing the pace laps of the race, when the drivers are warming up and they're in the field and they're doing all their stuff, going through pit row and checking their temps and everything. Sam Hagar and his band were playing tunes in the grandstands. Announcers just went to him and singing in the grandstand, singing "I Can't Drive 55," and I bet nobody knew who he was until you heard that song because it's such an old song at this point right now that no one really knew him. But play his guts out, and while he was singing, you saw them scroll through each row, and which drivers were in each row. And once they did that, they just cut to Sammy Hagar singing. And then finally, the green flag was thrown right as Sammy Hagar stopped. He timed out perfectly. I gotta say that before they went green flag racing, or else nobody would be able to hear him after that. But to me, they all seem over the top. But I have to remember it's Texas, and everything's bigger in Texas. So gotta give A Gossage some credit for that. He did he did a great job with all this All Star race pre festivities. I would not want to see this in an actual race though. It's just preference wise, just keep in the All Star race. It's supposed to be like this. It's supposed to be fun, having bands playing, crazy driver intros, and cheerleaders there with the drivers. It's all fun and games. It's not a points paying race. Like, just have fun with it. And I think they did a great job with all of them. But finally, after all of them, the real race began, and Kyle Larson did his thing, dominating the first round of 6. But then they cut to a camera in victory lane, and the Dallas Cowboy cheerleaders were lined up. Two cheerleaders were lined up between each suitcase. It looked like a suitcase. It literally looked like they were playing Deal or No Deal in victory lane at that point, and they were having random fans choose the random suitcase, which had a number from 8 to 12 in them. And so, if the number was 8, that meant 8 cars. And the top 8 would be inverted. If it was top nine being inverted, then up to 12. So yeah, they did that. It was pretty entertaining. I guess I didn't see that coming. I took a look into the rules, but I just didn't want it looked too overly complicated. So I just want to see how everything went through the race and see if they actually understood what they were doing. But yeah, deal or no deal, all that stuff. In the second round, all the fast cars were put in the back because of the inverts and the lucky suitcase number that the cheerleaders 4 and 5 had in victory lane. And in rounds 3 and 4, they basically did the same thing with the inverts. But during this time, through rounds 1 through 4, they were counting up cumulative points, if I'm correct. And basically, what they would do is they would add up all the positions that each driver finished in each round. So let's say you finish first. You finish first, 4 rounds. So you have 4 points. So you're automatically probably gonna be starting in first place. So it kind of went like that. So in the fifth round, all the teams had to make a mandatory pit stop, and whoever had the fastest pit stop would be $100,000. And an idea, this is a great idea. I wasn't there for it, but I see clips of all these pit crew challenges that they used to do on the Speed Channel during All Star Weekend. So I thought that this would be fun and entertaining to see. But when they were doing the mandatory pit stops of round 5, they weren't. The broadcast wasn't giving us any data or anything about who was doing the best. So it was just us seeing a couple of pit stops, and then and then at the end of the round, they just went to commercial break, and they were like, "Well, we don't." And the Fox broadcast said, "Well, we won't know until after the commercial break too, because no data was being added up. It was just by the officials in NASCAR, so nobody actually knew, unless on the big Haas TV they're playing that data over there. But I never saw anything in the broadcast." So finally, after the commercial break, we saw that it was a 9 team, Chase Elliott, that won the pit road competition, and rightfully so. We saw that on pit road that he was about a second behind Larson and William Byron, both first and second, and Elliott shot right past them and it looked like a second faster pit stop than the both of them. So his pit crew won the $100,000. So kudos to them. Great job on them. And Chase Elliott also won the 5th round of it of the competition of the race. But now we finally made it to the final round, which was 10-lap shootout for the win and $1 million. Starting positions were based off the cumulative score. I already explained all that to you, but everything was still very confusing during the broadcast. So we were learning stuff as they were learning. But on the restart, Chase Elliott was on the front row. I think Bragslowski was second on the bottom. And Chase Elliott had Kyle Larson behind him. And Larson gave Elliott a huge push down the backstretch. And then going into turns 3 and 4, instead of Larson giving Elliott another push and helping him get past Kozlowski, he instead went up into a higher group of the PJ1. And, in that moment, we were just all holding our breath and seeing what was going to happen. And somehow Kyle Larson's tire stuck and he can grip it, and he got a great launch off the corner and passed both Chase Elliott and Bragslowski off the corner. But then going next lap in 3 or 4, Chase Elliott was still underneath Larson trying to get that position back, and Chase Elliott went to 3 or 4 really hard, wasn't lifting, moved both him and Larson out of the preferred group, and then Kozlowski just came in and got underneath both of them and probably would have been clear on the front stretch, but never went up to block him at all. So Larson passed up Elliott and then had this big momentum and got right past Kozlowski too on the front stretch. So it was a very entertaining first 2 or 3 laps of the final shootout. It was a very ballsy move by Larson to do that because nobody had been up there that high in the PJ1 during that whole entire race. So it was just crazy to see that. I was just mind blown by that move. But that's why Larson's one of the best drivers in NASCAR right now. In the end, Kyle Larson, aka Young Money, wins it again for the third week in a row, even though this isn't a points paying race, but he's won the past 3 races of the season right now. He also had finished worse in second since the beginning of May, just for reference too. But he got the win. He wins the $1 million, and Hendrick keeps up their dominance, and it doesn't become a question of when will they win. It's now when will they stop winning, because they haven't lost a race since Darlington on Mother's Day weekend in the beginning of May, and they don't look like they're stopping anytime soon. Joe Gibbs and Penske are just trying to play catch up right now, and that's what every driver is saying in the field. Kyle Busch said the only way he can beat Hendrick Motorsports in the Coke 600 a few weeks ago was wrecking them, which was very funny to hear over his radio. He didn't wreck anybody. He was joking around. He wasn't actually going to do that. At least I don't think so. But everyone in the field is just starstruck at this point. But anything can happen in any given race. So we've already seen many other drivers have bad luck. Larson being one of those drivers early in the season at Atlanta, being passed up with a few laps to go. Denny Hamlin probably should have 2 or 3 wins this year, but they were taken away because of situations and how they did in those situations as well. But yeah, just who can stop Hendrick at this point? But now let's get into the next part of the video, which is previewing Nashville Superspeedway. So this is the first time the Cup Series, the highest ranking racing series in NASCAR, is going to Nashville Superspeedway. Both truck and Xfinity raced there during the 2000s when the track was first built there, I think. I don't know exactly why they stopped racing there. I think the track closed for a few years or so, and NASCAR decided not to go back there for some reason. But yeah, now they're finally, SMI put money into it, and they're bringing the track back because everyone wanting that track back. But who would be my favorites going to that track in the Cup Series? I would have to go for any of the 400 cars at this point because, like I said about the looking back on the All-Star race, Hendrick hasn't been stopped in the past 6 weeks, 5 to 6 weeks of this season. So I'm so right now they're my favorites. Any each one of the 4 drivers, Chase Elliott, Alex Bowman, Kyle Larson, and William Byron are I would go with any of those guys if I wanted to place a bet down or something. But if you're looking for an underdog, my first choice it would be Kyle Busch. He has raced at Nashville Superspeedway in the lower series and in the truck and experience series, and he won there in like 2009. And he famously smashed the guitar, the really expensive guitar, for some reason after winning the race. But he would be my first choice. He's been up there the past few weeks with Hendrick, competing with them. If maybe in some situation, last second restart, maybe he can somehow be out one of the 4 Hendrick cars for the win. So he would be my top choice at this point. Another choice would be Martin Truex Jr. because at Nashville Superspeedway they are using the 750 package, which is the same package that Martin Truex Jr. won with 3 times this year already. He won at Martinsville and Phoenix and Darlington with that package. He can be up there, but he's had a bad month the past few weeks. He's been on the decline after his victory in early May at Darlington, but I think he still got some speed. He'll be a big risk, but that'd be another person I go with. Denny Hamlin would be another pick for me. He's in the same category as Truex, which would be a tier below Kyle Busch at this point. Denny Hamlin, he's looked good, but like I said with Truex, he hasn't looked good in the past month or so. He's been having bad luck, so he would be somebody that I would look at who can turn it around this weekend if anything bad happens during the Hendrick cars. He can be up there. He's an experienced veteran. He knows how to win these situations and pull out for his team. But I really have no idea how they can honestly beat Hendrick Motorsports based on speed and talent and all that. But thank you for watching this week's episode of Being Banging. If you like the new format I'm using for the video, please like or comment down below. I don't want the race review to be so important because I'm releasing this so late compared to other channels, to other people, that I just feel like that my info is not that helpful later in the week. So I rather focus on other things such as NASCAR news or talking about other series such as the SRX, and maybe for like weeks like this, do a little preview for Nashville and maybe some other maybe some other races too in the following weeks as well. If you're looking for more content of mine, I have some other NASCAR content out there on this channel. You'll probably see them up on the screen at this point right now. And if you're an NFL fan, I have some old podcast episodes on here too that I do with my 2 friends, Sam and Jacob. But we haven't released a podcast episode since before the draft. So if you want to check that out, that'll be in the channel info too. But with that, make sure to stay classy.